Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and I'm here today with Jake, who does the Pauper videos and Commander Clash and a bunch of other stuff on the site. How's it going, Jake?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So today we got a pretty sweet video. So Eternal Masters is coming out soon, and one of the most exciting aspects of Eternal Masters is a bunch of cards were downgraded from uncommon or even rare to common. So they are going to be legal in Pauper for the first time. So this is the Eternal Masters New to Pauper Countdown. And since I don't know that much about Pauper, this list is mostly on Jake, so he came up with the countdown, and we're just going to go through the list and count down every Pauper, new to Pauper card from the set, starting with 26, working our way down to number 1. So are you ready for it, Jake?
I'm ready for it.
All right, first up, we have kind of the meh category. This is cards between 26 and 21. Coming in at the bottom of the list, Minstrel Charger.
Okay, so this is a functional reprint. We already have this exact card, and it's already a Pegasus. So if you need 5 to 8 of them, then your deck could be improved by the addition of Missile Charger. So basically unplayable.
Does the original the original C play at all?
No.
Okay.
Nope. There's too many better flyers for white.
All right, so this one's not going to see play. 25, we have Monk Idealist.
Okay, this is the exact same situation. It does have a new creature type, which is Cleric. So there's already an existing card called Auramancer that does the same thing. Cleric type might be relevant. Cleric Tribal is like this really, really fringe thing I've heard about. I don't think it's actually in Pauper. It's like in EDH or something weird like that. But if you need copies 5 to 8 of Auramancer that already existed in Pauper, then you might go here, but it's probably not going to be played.
So 24, we have Humble. So is this playable, Jake? Humble?
I don't think it's anywhere close to playable. There's already like really good removal in Pauper. We have Journey to Nowhere, we have Oblivion Ring, we have the new Angelic Purge, all in white. There's just too many better things going on to try to go around with a combat trick that might not even do the trick. One combat trick that's white that does see play, it's not really a combat trick, is Celestial Purge. So if you're looking for a 2-mana white instant to do something in combat, that's probably where you want to look.
So if you're going to pay 2 mana for a white removal spell, you want to actually get rid of the creature and not just shrink it down until end of turn.
Preferably, yes.
Next we have a wall, a Glacial Wall 0/7 for 3 mana.
We already have better walls. 7 toughness is not a really relevant thing. There's not a lot of 6 power things running out of the format. I looked around. These cards don't even see play, but there's already a 2-mana 0/5. There's already a 3-mana 0/5 that can transmute, so you can go find a better card than a wall during the many, many situations where you prefer a different card than a wall. Other decks will just attack around it. I mean, it's efficient, but it's not what you really want to be doing in any blue decks right now.
All right. 22, we have Carbonize, some red removal.
Pauper, would you believe it or not, has a lot of commons that are red that have been printed over the years, and they actually give us really efficient red removal at common in the various sets. So we have Lightning Bolt, Pillar of Flame, Magma Spray, Incinerate, which are all just like years better than this card. So there's no real reason to downgrade yourself to like Carbonize. Like Carbonize is still efficient, like it's gonna be played and limited in Eternal Masters, but it's not really Pauper material.
Fair enough. All right, 21, the last of our meh category, Stupefying Touch.
All right, so Wizards has done this thing recently where they stopped printing cards with like good activated abilities at common because it leads to repetitive board states, which makes it turn out that Stupefying Touch doesn't actually really affect anything that gets played in the format. There's a couple of things with tap abilities that you see now and then. I guess you could play this as like a blue pacifism for like ATOG, so you can't like pump up the opponent can't pump up their ATOG. But in general, there's not that many creatures running around with activated abilities, so even the fact that it cantrips just doesn't matter because all it's ever going to do really is cantrip. So I don't think this will be played.
Moving on to the actual honorable mentions, this is cards 20 to 11. Coming in 20th, Avarex.
Avarex. So Avarex is really cool. It does have some really good stuff going for it, and that is, one, you play the Avarex, and you get another Avarex, and then you play the Avarex, and you get another Avarex. That's the whole point of the card. So it guarantees you a play 4 turns in a row. You attack for 3, then 6, then 9, then 12. So if your opponent's sitting on the other side of the board doing absolutely nothing, this is actually pretty good. The problem is, in Pauper, if you're an aggro deck, I mean, having a 5-drop and then like guaranteed plays on turn 6 and beyond is not really what you want to be doing. You want to be attacking on turns 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So it's basically the problem of an aggro card that is expensive, which you don't really see a lot of success. But I mean, it kind of is efficient. You don't even have to run the second one out there. If you think they have a counterspell, you can just pump mana into, pumping up the power of the first one or the so on. So it has a little bit of raw power going for it, but it doesn't really fit in any deck or strategy that exists right now.
Coming in 19th, Prowling Pangolin.
So the problem with this card is Gurmag Angler. If you want a big, efficient beater in black, you're going to go with Gurmag Angler. You can cast it for 1 or 2 or 3 mana sometimes. It's a 5/5. It's sufficiently large. Pangolin, it's always going to cost 5. Your opponent has a way out if they happen to not be able to deal with a 6/5 and have the creatures lying around. Basically, giving your opponent a choice, it always makes the card worse than it looks at first glance. So I don't think this will slot into mono black control. I don't really know what other decks it'll slot into. It's just a little bit too variable. It gives your opponent a little bit too many options. Maybe if it costs like 4 or something, but by the time you get later in the game, it's just more likely your opponent might have like a random 1/1 or 1/2 lying around to sacrifice. So it might not be a high enough impact.
So do big black creatures pretty much have to go through the Gurmag Angler test at this point in Pauper? Is that what they're compared to?
Yeah, I just can't imagine playing this over Gurmag Angler. You would have to be a black deck that wanted to use your graveyard so much that you just couldn't stand exiling cards. And there are also probably other things running around, like, guess what, Grey Merchant of Asphodel costs 5? So you have to be like a non-devotion deck that's already using your graveyard for something else and has enough removal or like maybe like some pestilence type effects, like that you're going to take out tokens so that you can't just get this countered by them sacrificing 2 1/1s. So like, too many restrictions. It's probably not going to see play, but it's kind of interesting.
All right, number 18, we have Undying Rage, a pretty aggressive enchantment.
All right, so this is kind of like a Rancor type thing where you keep on getting it back to your hand, so you can keep on reusing it. So it's a enchantment that kind of performs like an artifact, like an equipment. You can keep on using it. The problem with this one, and why it's lower on the list, is we actually already got something very similar to this that's more efficient recently, and that was in Magic Origins. We had Infectious Bloodlust. Gives +2/+1 in haste, and whenever the enchanted creature dies, you may search your library for a card named Infectious Bloodlust, reveal it, put it in your hand. Also, the creature attacks each turn if able. But basically, it's almost as good an effect as Undying Rage at 1 less mana, and you still get the effect of getting it back over and over again through the ability of going to go get more of them. So it's not efficient enough, and there's already something else that does something similar a little bit better.
That makes sense. So this card I'm really interested in because it was a rare last time it was in print. We're talking about Emperor Crocodile, downgraded all the way to common from rare.
All right, so creatureless control. I mean, everyone loves creatureless control, right? You don't do anything else, and then you have one game-ending threat. Well, the problem with that is if it doesn't have if it's not like an Aetherling that has Shroud or a Shroud-like ability where it can dodge removal, that what you've done is by going from 0 creatures to 4 is you turn on all your opponent's removal.
I think you might have read that card backwards, Jake.
What?
It's actually when you control no other creatures, you sack it. So there has to be another creature on your side of the battlefield.
What? Oh my goodness! You can tell I've never played 9th edition.
Yeah, I remember.
Wow.
This is why I know this. I was playing a 9th edition flashback draft, and my opponent slammed an Emperor Crocodile very aggressively on an empty board, and it immediately died, and they shame scooped. So that's how I know how Emperor Crocodile works.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I read this card perfectly backwards. It should probably be bumped up 5 or 6 places on the list.
All right, next on our honorable mentions, we have Orcish Oriflame.
Basically, the answer to this is just no. It's only +1/+0. It's 4 mana. There are a ton of really good pump effects. There's actually a whole Temur tokens deck based around Rites of Initiation, which can give +3 or +4 or +5 or +6/+0 to all your creatures in a single turn. It's limited, but your opponent's dead right after you cast it, so it doesn't really matter. There's more efficient creatures that you want to be running instead of this enchantment. It's nice that we get I guess it's not called the global enchantment anymore or anything like that, but basically a non-aura enchantment at common, because you don't really see a lot of those at common. But I don't think it's going to affect any of the decks that currently exist.
Alright, we have another red card next, Dragon's Egg. This one's pretty spicy. This is a more recent card, actually. It was uncommon in one of the core sets not too long ago.
Yeah, so I like this card. It's a little bit higher than the other things on the list. And then I got sad because I started looking through and I realized that Fleshback Marauder and the Undead, not Undead, the whatever the other functional reprint of it that we got in DTK was, they're not actually common. Apparently they were both uncommon. And I was really hoping there'd be some sort of like red-black sacrifice effect deck that we could, we could turn this dragon egg into a dragon as soon as we put it on the battlefield and stuff, but there's really not that much. There's Abyssal Gatekeeper. When it dies, each player sacrifices a creature. So there might be some sort of weird aristocrats style sacrifice deck that can, abuse this card and sacrifice it for value and immediately turn it into a fire-breathing dragon. But if you're just counting on your opponent attacking to turn this into a dragon for you, it takes a little bit too long. You have to rely on them. If they really can't deal with the dragon, they just won't attack you, and then you won't have an opportunity to crack the egg. So, yeah.
Is a 2/2 flyer with fire breathing good in Pauper? Like, is the payoff playable?
I mean, if you are mono red or like more red than you are black in the theoretical sacrifice deck, like if it can hit for 5 a turn evasively, that's got to be good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are other things flying around in the air. But a lot of them are like 1 power, like the Delver's Fairies and so on. So it's not like 2 toughness flyers are especially vulnerable more so than other creatures.
Okay. Next on our honorable mentions, Sylvan Might. Another combat trick. This one with flashback.
So it does have flashback, which, it's really cool when you get to 6. You put it on 1 creature, you put it on another creature, and you've kind of created your own overrun for 2 of your creatures. And since it's instant speed, you can do that after block. So whatever gets blocked, you put this on, and it's basically approximating overrun at common. The problem is we already actually have pretty efficient pump spells. We have Vines of Vastwood, we have Mutagenic Growth that are just cheaper. So I don't see this fighting its way into a green aggro deck like Stompy, but it actually is kind of close. It's getting where it might be efficient enough to be run. And then if we add like some incidental milling effects where we could get the flashback for free without having to cast it the first time, that might be something that is interesting.
Up next we have a really interesting card, Tidal Wave. It's like a blue removal spell almost.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like this in Pauper right now. This is really intriguing to me. So the main reason I was thinking about this is because the top deck right now is Mono Blue Delver. And Mono Blue, guess what? They have to play all blue spells, and blue is not known for getting removal. And in fact, the only way besides combat for them to get stuff off the table is Vapor Snag. Right now is what most of the lists run, and that doesn't actually kill the creature. It just it bounces it so you can try to counter it on the way back down, or just kill them before that creature ends up mattering before they recast it. And this might be interesting as like a 1 or 2 up to surprise your opponent. Like all of a sudden, Mono Blue has a way to get your stuff off the table, and it does something a lot different than what the deck already does. However, the deck does want to be holding up mana at instant speed. It's got things with flash, it's got counter magic, so it wouldn't be that hard to slot Tidal Wave in and surprise an opponent with it. The question is how much it really needs it. So Delver prides itself on flying over the opponent and killing them without really caring what they're doing on the ground. Bouncing the biggest things that matter and countering the other stuff. But this could be a good spell for creatures that you just have to get rid of, and Vapor Snag isn't sufficient.
Is the fact that it's a 5/5 that trades with Angler, like, is that a big bonus, or isn't it really that relevant?
I mean, 5/5 is very big, and that is important. Like, there's no 6/6s floating around in Pauper that you need to worry about. Like, anything bigger than a 5/5, you're talking Ulamog's Crusher, you're talking Atog after 3 or 4 things have been sacrificed to it. It's not very often that something's going to run into a 5/5 and live to tell the tale.
So pretty much, if they don't have a removal spell, which actually is pretty painful if you have to use your Victim of Night to kill this creature that's going to die anyway, you're going to trade with basically any creature in the format.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. Now a very aggressive card, the opposite of Tidal Wave, Elite Vanguard, a Savannah Lions.
So this is efficient. It's a 1-drop, and it fills a spot on the curve that generally doesn't have a lot of different spots available to it. There's the current 1-drop of choice is potentially Ication Javelineers, 1-mana 1/1 that enters with a single counter, and you can remove that counter to ping something, 1 damage to a target creature or player. And a 2/1, obviously that can deal a lot more damage over the course of the game than this 1/1 can, if you can keep on getting in with it. The problem is there's not really a deck that wants it. The white aggro decks are generally tokens, and they're looking to go really wide and make multiple creatures with all their cards. This could potentially slot in as a couple, maybe like a 2 or 3 of, to even out the mana curve and start the beatdown a little bit earlier. So I could see it showing up in some white aggro decks. The problem is there aren't a lot of white aggro decks right now.
Up next, we have one of my favorite cards. This is the last of our honorable mentions, Desperate Ravings. So, Jake, what do you think about this one in Pauper?
Well, I love Desperate Ravings, as I think a lot of Control players do. It's a lot of fun. It works well potentially with Madness cards if you wanted to try to make a Madness deck around this. We already have similar effects, though, that don't see too much play. We have Think Twice, which sees play in like the blue-black control decks. Unfortunately, Desperate Ravings can't be played there because you can't cast it. So if we got like a Grixis control list going on that had like Desperate Ravings instead of Think Twice and could, hide some Madness cards in there somehow, I would really love to see it happen. The problem is that none of our Madness cards are super great, and this discards at random. So you're not always going to discard your Madness cards. There's not a lot of reason to go to 3-color when blue-black control is already got a lot of really good tools and a lot of really good removals. So I want to see this make like Grixis control happen, and there's like a very small chance that it could, but I don't see a lot of decks that are going to pop up and get super effective just because Desperate Ravings is added to the format. Before we move on to the next section, we are missing Wake Dancer from our list. It was originally common in Conspiracy, but it never showed up online, so it wasn't legal before, but now it is legal. I probably would have put it at number 12 or so overall. Maybe there's a potential for it in like the Sultai Morbid deck that's seen some fringe play, but basically the verdict there is that Phyrexian Rager is just a better 3-drop, and if you're playing mono black control, you also want all the Chittering Rats before you even think about the 3-drops. So I don't think it beats the better 3-drops we already have.
So now we are on to the good cards. This is the top 10 cards in Eternal Masters that are new to Pauper. Coming in at number 10, we have Cepheid Sage.
Okay, so Cepheid Sage, first of all, it's awesome, because when it enters the battlefield, you Compulsive Research, and Compulsive Research is a great card. And I think this might actually even have some combo potential. So I'll talk more about it when we get to, what's the name of the card? Paragon Drake, which is a little bit further up on the list. But just keep this card in mind. Realize that it's an ETB effect that could potentially be abused. And even if you're not abusing it, even if you just cast this once, a Compulsive Research is like a 3-mana card. So paying just 1 mana extra to get a 2/3 body it's a pretty good deal. So I think this is efficient enough. It slots into, not really any existing deck, but decks that I think could exist after Eternal Masters is released.
Exciting. So Eternal Masters might spawn some new archetypes that we might talk about more in the future of our countdown. Number 9, we have a black card, Night's Whisper. So before you break this down, as soon as this was spoiled, I tweeted, like, oh, Sign in Blood is not relevant to Pauper anymore. And a bunch of people that know more about Pauper than me said, well, that's not really true. Sign in Blood isn't hard to cast in mono black decks because you have all swamps, and it can kill an opponent. So what do you think, Jake? Where does this fit with Sign in Blood in Pauper?
So basically, it's never going to replace Sign in Blood in mono black control, because mono black control doesn't run any colorless lands at all. And that's generally because they have Pestilence and or Crypt Rats, and they want to make as much use of their black mana as possible. It's possible that maybe they stop running Sign in Blood, start running Night's Whisper, and then can have like a couple of colorless flex slots in their list, like maybe run a Haunted Fengraf or a Radiant Fountain, some sort of utility colorless lands. But I don't think that's what's going to happen to mono black. I think that if Night's Whisper is played, it'll be played by non-mono black decks.
Okay.
So then moving on from there, we already have a lot of good card draw. Like if you're multicolor black and you're looking for a card draw spell, we have Read the Bones, which is really good on 3. The Scry 2 is definitely relevant. Going down to 2 mana is great. We also have other card draw moving around though. We have Ponder in the format, we have Preordained in the format, we have Think Twice in the format. We have a lot of other choices. But again, Night's Whisper is very efficient. It could definitely slot into control decks. Probably not mono black control, potentially blue black control. And I really, really hope that theoretical Grixis control list that I was fawning over that might not exist, but I'm going to try to build anyway.
That's what I was thinking. It would fit well in Grixis just because the mana cost is so less prohibitive compared to the Sign in Blood. So
Yeah, precisely.
number 8 on our countdown, we are going Boros for Rally the Peasants.
So yeah, Rally the Peasants. It doesn't look like much, and you say, oh yeah, you can use it once, and then you can flash it back later. Until you think about like it's really late game, and you're trying to beat this control deck, and they keep stopping you, and all of a sudden you like for some reason hit your 6th land drop when you really don't want to, and then you realize you can cast this and flash it back in the same turn, and your 1/1s are hitting for 5, and you got a couple of 1/1s around. So again, it's a common card that can approximate Overrun, and you don't want to underestimate that. So once again, the deck for it doesn't quite exist, but this is a powerful card. So if we have a red-white aggro deck that exists, Rally the Peasants is definitely going to be in, I think, as at least a 1 or a 2 of. It's really efficient. It's pretty scary. That value, once it hits the graveyard, your opponent like always has to play around it and block in such a way that if you cast it, they don't want to die, and then you don't even have to cast it if you don't want to. So I like it for its efficiency. I don't like it because I'm not sure where the red-white aggro deck is that wants it.
I will say this card is pretty scary. I have been blown out in limited by this card many a time. Being an instant's a big deal because obviously you can wait and cast it after blocks are declared and see which of your creatures are unblocked and kind of add up if you're going to be able to do lethal and then fire off +4, +0 on all your creatures, and it can close out a lot of games. So.
Yeah, this might provide sufficient incentive for those mono white token decks that you see every once in a while to drop the Guardian's Pledge, which is it costs double white mana and it only affects your white creatures anyway, and then splash this and then like some red token makers because there's some really good red token makers.
Number 7 on our list. This card people were really hyped about on Twitter when it was first spoiled for Pauper. Wildfire Emissary.
All right, so one of the best removal spells in the format is Journey to Nowhere. This dodges that. It also dodges Oblivion Ring. It also dodges the white creatures that could block it. It also doesn't die to Lightning Bolt. So you already are checking off a lot of really important, really efficient spells that people run that it does not die to. Now, there is commonly played removal that does kill it. Galvanic Blast is around. There's Flame Slash that certain decks run. Decks that are just not white that can chump block this or put 2 creatures in front of it aren't too afraid of it. However, it does have some serious potential in that it's a very good finisher. I think most Kuldotha Jeskai lists run like 0 ways to get this off the battlefield, basically. They'd have to like quadruple block it with Goblin tokens, basically, is what we're talking about, because none of their white flyers can block it. So, or maybe like double block it with Muldrifters or something like that. So it definitely provides a very, very big problem to the Kuldotha Jeskai lists. And, incidentally dodges removal from other decks as well. So I'm not sure if it'll be main deck play or sideboard play, but this will definitely see some play in Pauper and frustrate some opponents for sure.
All right, number 6 on our countdown. An Enchantress card, Yavimaya Enchantress.
Yeah, so I unfortunately just played 5-color Boggles, so I don't know how quickly I can loop back around to it so I can try the version that has Yavimaya Enchantress in it, but this definitely adds something to the deck. I would probably try to cut down on like the core Skyfisher as my efficient creature of choice and instead go with Enchantress and not rely so much on the ETB effects and just try to get this Enchantress as stupidly large as possible. But this is a very fun card to play with. It definitely is very powerful. I'm not exactly sure what kind of decks it'll spawn. If it's just going to go in Boggles as like an additional threat that unfortunately can be targeted with kill spells, or if it'll spawn a different deck entirely of its own. But either way, I hope to see it around.
So you think it's of a power level that it's worth giving a shot?
Definitely. We have abundant growth. We have a lot of other weird cantrip enchantments that exist in the format. It's really easy to flood the board with enchantments in Pauper. It's very easy for this to be like a 6/6, and 3-mana 6/6s are pretty efficient.
All right, we are down to our top 5. Coming in at number 5 in our new to Pauper Eternal Masters cards. Green again. Oh no, Elvis Vanguard. Oh, I hate elves, Jake. Ever since you built that elves deck, whenever I lose to it in a pauper queue, I think of you.
Well, you're welcome, I guess. Yeah, Elves is a real deck, but unfortunately, it just hasn't been around that much. It has a few few too many weaknesses. A lot of decks run a lot of removal, and if you just get your mana elf killed 2 turns in a row, it can be a little bit too slow to kill. But Elvish Vanguard is a way to speed that up. You probably don't want it over the pump elf, the +X+X elf, but this could potentially see play over like an Elvish Visionary. I know I wasn't really that satisfied with Elvish Visionary when I ran it last time, and there's probably a couple more slots that are, variable, could go one way or another, but I think Elvish Vanguard has potential to be very strong.
So next time you take elves out for a spin, are you gonna try to find a way to fit some number in and test it out?
Absolutely. I would hope that I would end up with 4 of these, but it might just be 2 or 3.
Sweet. Well, number 4, we are heading to blue for a flyer, Warden of Evo's Isle. So this not only flies and is an aggressive threat, but it also reduces the cost of other flying creatures you have.
All right, there's one reason, and one reason alone this is so high on my list. Can you guess what it is?
Mole Drifter?
There you go, Mole
Got
Drifter.
it.
So it turns out Mole Drifter is a creature spell with flying, and it makes it cost 4. And if that doesn't sell you on Warden of Evo's Isle, I don't know what will. So yeah, basically, Warden might be played in Delver, probably not, because they have a lot of 1-drops that it doesn't really affect. It might be played with decks that run Mole Drifter. It might spawn an entirely new Flyers-only archetype. I don't know what it's going to do, but I really want to run it alongside Mole Drifter because I love Mole Drifter.
I believe it also reduces the evoke cost, so you get the 2-mana divination as well if you want to with Mole Drifter.
Exactly. They refuse to give us that in mono blue, so we'll have to make it ourselves.
Build your own Night's Whisper with no loss of life.
Exactly.
Number 3 on our list, blue again, Paragon Drake.
Okay, so Paragon Drake. There's a lot of argument for this being number 1 on the list. However, someone asked me on Twitter, they said, what's the over-under for how long until this card is banned? And I thought, you're actually right. That question actually makes a lot of sense. And I said something like 2 or 3 months. I forget what my exact number was. But there was a reason that Cloud of Fairies was banned, and Paragon Drake does everything Cloud of Fairies does, but better. So, for the mono blue, I'll explain the comment in a second, but for the mono blue Delver list, they don't really care about Paragon Drake. The Cloud of Fairies, they could flash in, come in, and then also spell stutter sprite and up your fairy count and let you counter spells early on. However, there was an entirely different function in a deck called Esper Familiars. And basically what you do is you get out a Paragon Drake, or you get out a Cloud of Fairies, we'll go with the old version first, and you get out a Mnemonic Wall, and then you Ghostly Flicker both of them, untap 2 lands, get back the Ghostly Flicker with Mnemonic Wall, and do that again. And with dual lands or with ways to reduce the mana cost of things, such as the... I can't believe I can't remember the name of these. The Familiars.
Sunscape Familiar and something, another one.
Nightscape. Sunscape and Nightscape Familiar. Reducing the cost of your cards, you can actually generate mana while you do this. So you generate infinite mana, and then after that, you just dig through your deck with all your draw card spells till you find Denizen. You find Court Street Denizen?
Is that the mill card?
Yeah, I'm finding the exact name of it. Mono blue Sage. Thank you. Sage's Row Denizen. So you play that, and it says whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under you control, you mill 2. And then you just keep on blinking your creatures over and over again. You mill your opponent for however much you need, and then they die. They draw themselves out. Well, now that Paragon Drake exists, you don't actually need any cost reducers or any dual lands that tap for more than 1 mana, because it already untaps 5 mana by itself, and Ghostly Flicker only costs 3. So Ghostly Flicker, Paragon Drake, and Mnemonic Wall alone is already netting you infinite mana. So then from there, basically the combo just got a whole lot easier and effectively no slower, because while Paragon Drake costs 5 to Cloud of Fairies 2, you already had to get to 5 mana for the combo anyway to cast your Mnemonic Wall. So it might make it kind of half a turn slower, but at the same time, you have to find a lot fewer pieces, and you don't need to worry about reducing the cost so much because Paragon Drake already nets you 2 mana every single time you Ghostly Flicker. provided you have the Mnemonic Wall. So it's going to bring back Esper Familiars as a deck, and then hopefully it'll get banned immediately because it was a very unfun deck to play around. It had a lot of different recursion. It had a lot of different ways to draw and find the different pieces of its combo. So even if you thwarted it once or twice, it could keep on rebuilding. And it was not fun to play against, and that's why it was banned. And for some reason, they printed Paragon Drake at Common to put it back into Pauper, probably without even thinking about it. But I'm pretty sure after like a month or two, they're going to realize that they just made this miserable deck even better and then brought it back to life. So I don't think it's going to be around. So it could be number 1 in its effect on Pauper, but I put it all the way back at number 3 to indicate that it probably is not going to be around forever.
So do you think that deck, the Esper Familiar deck, immediately jumps into the first tier, the top tier of the format?
If it wasn't for metagaming, where people are already thinking of that, and then people are going more aggro to try to beat that deck, or providing main deck answers to try to beat that deck, then yes. Because people know it's going to happen, it might be less so. Like, it might be more people metagaming against that deck, but it's definitely going to be tier 1 immediately, I believe.
Okay, well, I guess Eternal Masters is shaking up Pauper then, if it's already created a tier 1 deck, most likely. So, but amazingly, that's only number 3 on the list. At number 2, we have one of the most iconic red creatures, probably of all time, Curd Ape.
Okay, so Curd Ape, it's efficient, it's good, it has a home in Pauper. That's basically all you need to know. There's a zoo archetype that could turn its forests into 5-color lands. That turns on the Wild Nicodle at the same time as turning on the Curd Ape. Gives you all the +1/+1 bonuses that you want. There's also just a simple red-green aggro deck that you could make out of this. Stompy is a deck, and you could throw in Curd Ape because it's very good. In general, this is just a hyper-efficient aggro card, and I expect it to potentially put Zoo all the way to tier 1, potentially make some knockoff of Zoo, some like only red-green version of it, into tier 1. I expect to see a lot of Curd Ape.
Where is Zoo before Curd Ape as far as the format goes? Like,
I have
tier-wise?
never played against it in a league.
Oh, so it's pretty far down there as far as the tiers.
But people know about it. Like it's played like outside of leagues, and maybe it's played in leagues that I just haven't seen before. But it's very uncommon right now. But I think Curd Ape, it's extremely aggressive. It's like a 1-drop, which is exactly what the deck wants. I think it could be enough to propel it at least into tier like 1.5.
Awesome. Well, now it's time for our number 1 card from Eternal Masters for Pauper, and that is Nimble Mongoose. So, Jake, where does Nimble Mongoose fit?
Nimble Mongoose, it fits at a special place in my heart, right next to Delver of Secrets. So, right now, the Delver deck of choice, if you're not going mono blue Delver, is blue black, and you mill a bunch, and you have early Gurmag Anglers, along with Delver of Secrets, and you beat down. And it's called Angler Delver generally, and I've played that before on Playing Pauper. You can go look it up. However, this could be an entirely new breed of that deck, which would be green-blue. And you still play all the mill effects, but instead of getting rid of all your cards with a Gurmag Angler, you keep them all in the grave for Nimble Mongoose. So you have the 1-mana 3/2 threat of Delver, you have the 1-mana 3/3 Shroud threat of Nimble Mongoose, and you get to keep your graveyard full. And the benefit of that is if you have 2 Nimble Mongooses, they can both be on at the same time. If you have 2 Gurmag Anglers, it's going to be a long time before you cast that second one. Additionally, this can work well with flashback spells. If you're milling yourself for value, you could flip over some stuff you want to cast. I'm not sure that there'll be like a mono green version of this. I'm mostly looking into the version with Delver Secrets. I think that's where most people have their eyes on right now. But once again, it's very efficient. It spawns a sort of interesting type of deck. It's not just like a mindless aggro card, so I think it'll be very fun to play with, where your opponent is trying to beat you down, but at the same time, they're trying to sculpt their graveyard as fast as possible. It might lead to those weird starts where you go Nimble Mongoose, Wild Mongrel, discard my entire hand. Can you beat a 3/3, basically? Because some decks don't play like bigger creatures like 3/3s and 4/4s, so it could be something like that happens. But I think we're going to be seeing a lot of different variations of this Nimble Mongoose deck, and I'm interested to see like what color combination wins out and exactly how it's used.
It's really amazing to me how many cards from the Canadian Threshold or Rug Delver legacy deck is available in Pauper. You got the Delver, you got the Nimble Mongoose, the Lightning Bolt, the Daze, other common counter spells like Spell Pierce. You have half of a legacy deck. You're missing the lands, which I'm sure makes the deck a lot less consistent, but still, that's a lot of a legacy deck that's playable in a Pauper format.
Yeah, it is surprising how much more Pauper looks like Legacy or Vintage, like compared to like Standard or Modern. Like you'd expect, because it's played with commons, it'd be like the lowest power level. But we have Counterspell, Lightning Bolt, we have Pyroblast and Hydroblast on our sideboard. We just have a bunch of ridiculously powerful cards, and it's kind of cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that has been our Eternal Masters New to Pauper countdown. Do you have any final thoughts, Jake, on the way out the door?
Paragon Drake, please ban ASAP.
All right, you heard it here first. Paragon Drake needs a ban hammer already.
We have played literally 0 games of Pauper with it, and it needs to be banned.
Well, hopefully Wizards watches this and keeps your plea in mind. Anyway, Jake, thanks for hanging out. And everyone, thank you very much for watching. And I guess you'll be back next week. This is going up Tuesday, so next week I think there will be a new Playing Pauper, so keep your eyes out for that. As these cards are available on Magic Online, I'm sure you will see Jake testing out some of them in video form.
And don't forget, if you want to brew with these new cards and send me your list, you can tweet to me at JakeStylesMTG or email me at JakeStyles@MTGGoldfish.com. I would love to see your takes on these cards. I'm definitely going to be having at least 2 or 3 weeks devoted to new Eternal Masters cards once they're online. So send me your builds if you have them.
Awesome. Well, send Jake your Pauper builds with Eternal Masters, and keep your eyes open for playing Pauper next week. Anyway, thanks again, Jake, for hanging out, and thanks everyone for watching, and we will talk to you soon.